Chris Lynch with ePark Canterbury. Park at 264 Russley Road and go in the draw to win a trip to Samoa. eParkcanterbury.co.nz.
New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, nice to see you again. Thanks for your time.
Good to be with you, Chris. Always good to spend time with you.
Before we discuss some of the Christchurch issues, let's briefly touch on former Prime Minister Helen Clark narking on Winston Peters. What did you make of that?
Well, look, I mean, the first thing I'd say is that our position on AUKUS Pillar 2 and wanting to explore it and what that option might mean for New Zealand, it's something that the previous government held 159 days ago. So there's been no change in the position. As Winston Peters has said, our officials will work through and explore the opportunities there. So to be honest, I'm not sure whether to listen to Helen Clark or Chris Hipkins or Phil Twyford at the moment. But what I'd just say to you is bipartisanship on foreign policy really matters, and that's what I strive to do as leader of the opposition. And I hope this opposition will do the same thing.
Have you had to pick up the phone and say to Mr. Peters, when he just tone it down a bit?
Well, look, I mean, they're not comments I would have made, but, at the end of the day, I'm pretty relaxed about it. And, frankly, Bob Carr is a very seasoned former politician from the Labour Party in New South Wales. He's quite used to the rough and tumble of politics. And frankly, Winston Peters is doing a brilliant, brilliant job. I mean, he's brought more energy in 159 days to our foreign affairs and resetting our foreign affairs with many countries around the world than what we saw in the previous administration by a long shot.
Well, I'll give you that. His timetable, his global timetable in the last 3 months is incredible.
Well, he's been excellent. I mean, he's made connections with all foreign ministers and prime ministers in the places that he's visited. He's let people know very clearly that we've got a reset of our foreign policy happening in New Zealand, which is to focus on the Indo-Pacific. I've been out there in the world talking to Pacific leaders, but also in Southeast Asia. Winston's been all around the world doing what he needs to do to make sure that people know we're back and we want to engage. And likewise, you've seen Judith Collins on defence and Todd McClay on trade doing exactly the same thing. And between the four of us, we're working together really well to make sure that we lift the intensity and urgency of our relationships.
More allegations this morning over Julie Anne Genter's behaviour. Is this a storm in a teacup, or is this something more serious in your view? Well, what you know and what you've seen.
Yeah, look, I mean, I wasn't there the other night, but I mean, obviously what I saw was, quite outrageous. But what I'd say is that's ultimately an issue for Parliament to deal with. And also, ultimately, it's an issue for the Greens leadership to deal with. They've had their fair set of troubles, I'd say to you, in the last 6 months with staff, with MPs. And, I would hope that they are taking it seriously and responding as they should.
Should she be stripped of her portfolios?
It's really a question for the Green Party, to work that through, and they should stand up and take action and believe what they believe and follow through. If they think there's something there that they need to do something about, they should do it.
How have you come across her? What have your interactions been like? Have you ever noticed any aggressive behaviour yourself?
No, not personally. I mean, I've dealt with her on the Transport Select Committee when I was in opposition and she was in government and part of the last government, and we can have some robust debates. But as I said, I didn't see anything. I wasn't there in Parliament the other day. My priority that night was just making sure Matt Lucy was okay, which I caught up with him, which was fine.
He was fine?
He was fine. Yeah, I mean, he was, everyone was very shaken by it. We haven't seen anything like that happen in the Parliament. But ultimately, look, it's a decision for Parliament to make as to what goes on from here, and ultimately it's a decision for the Greens as to what standard they want to walk past and which standard they accept.
I know that you're going to be making some announcements later on about the Christchurch Call. It has been in the media recently, and it's probably quite topical as you are in Christchurch. It's been suggested it's a bit of an irrelevancy. It hasn't really achieved much, Prime Minister. Do you agree with that?
Well, look, I mean, we'll have more to say about that shortly as to where we go with it going forward from
I feel like you do agree with that.
Well, no, what I'd say to you is that I think, there's been a lot of work on, algorithms and violent extremist content online. And I think when you go through the last, 5 years of the Christchurch Call, it's actually been embraced well globally. And you've actually seen tech platforms and other countries and other companies actually participate in that call and make sure that we can remove violent extremist content online as quickly as possible. It doesn't always work.
Yeah, well, it doesn't always work,
but their work is important work.
But then again, I mean, I can go on Twitter and see some of the most grotesque stuff, not by searching, it just comes up in my feed. And I think to myself, wow, the Christchurch Call's been a failure if I can see that today.
Well, I'd just say, it's a huge volume of work, of objectionable material you might see from time to time. We've had recent instances of that, just recently in Australia. But, again, I think calling the tech community to, this problem and this issue has been important work.
Christchurch City Council rates, it's a boring topic, but it is an important one. I mean, we're looking at double digits, not just here in Christchurch, but right across New Zealand. Has the government had any discussions with local government on perhaps getting rid of GST or reimbursing councils with GST?
Yeah, I mean,
because they're not surviving.
Well, I mean, the key thing to remember, and I spoke to the Mayor in Christchurch this morning about this, which was that, when you look at his numbers as to what's driving the rates increase, a lot of it is to do with inflation, insurance premiums, all those sorts of things. And so what we have to do as a central government is make sure we work on the root cause of the problem at the moment, which is get inflation back down under 3% so we get stability in the financial system. We're working incredibly hard on that task. If we can lower inflation below 3, we lower interest rates, we get the economy growing again, we get growth in the economy. 4 of the last 5 quarters we've been shrinking, remember, and then you get people be able to maintain employment. So there's a very strong linkage between us doing our core job, which is to deal with the underlying root cause of all of this, which is inflation. And probably half the rates increase, I suspect, is inflationary related. Equally, you've seen a slowdown, particularly with the Christchurch commercial entities, which means they're not paying the dividend that they once would have paid back to the council. And that's because the economy has been slowing down. So, a lot of it is about getting the core economic settings right, so that we don't have high levels of inflation and we actually have economic growth.
There's a lot of ideology within local government. We've got climate change, we've got cycleways, a very contentious one in Herwood Road, for example. The majority of residents surveyed don't want it, but the council wants it because it's trying to encourage modal shift. So we've got these power plays between residents and ideology. What do you say?
Well, what I'd say is, first and foremost, we want our councils across the country focusing on the must-do stuff, not the nice-to-do things. It's important they do the basics.
A cycleway is nice to have?
Well, I think the basics, of making sure they do the basics well is important. Good, fast consenting, give people clarity around a whole bunch of local regulation rules that happens. We obviously know that we've got work to do in terms of I want to see partnership between central and local government in a much more constructive way. You've seen our focus and with respect to transport is about making sure our roading network is up to scratch. That's where our focus will be. 15 roads of national significance, 4 public transport projects, 3 of which are in Auckland, 1 in lower North Island. But our real opportunity is actually to upgrade the roading network that we've got in this country that's been run down. 61,000 potholes across it. That's where our focus needs to be in doing the basics first.
Plenty of potholes still here in Christchurch, just go down Horswood Junction Road. But anyway, successful developer Anthony Goff wants the council to follow your lead or the government's lead and cut jobs at council to save cash. Is that a good idea?
Well, again, those are...
Because that's what your government's doing, isn't it?
Well, sure, but I'm not the Mayor of Christchurch and I'm not on the council. So, the bottom line is, we have a system where the good people of Christchurch vote for their councillors, they participate in local government elections and they elect the people that represent them. So that's ultimately an issue for them. At our level, the principle's been pretty simple, which is that we saw a huge amount of growth in the bureaucracy and the back office functions of government. And I don't think any of that helps. I think, as I keep saying, I don't want 200 spin doctors, I want 200 real doctors. And so actually being able to recycle the cash from inefficiencies, bureaucracy, dumb programs that aren't working, wasteful spending, all of that stuff. I gave our CEOs targets, 6.5%, 7.5% increase in savings, how they determine it, and then I gave them very clear goals and targets about what they're expected to deliver. And then they want to make sure they organise all of their resources as they see fit to deliver against the outcomes, which is what I'll hold them accountable for. So, unfortunately in this case, yes, that will lead to job losses in Wellington. But you just have to remember there's been an 84% increase in government spending in the last 6 years. There's been 18,500 more public servants created. Our debt's gone from $5 to $100 billion. And we've had rising levels of net marginal tax.
Can we blame COVID for that though?
No, we can't.
Is that a cop-out?
That's a cop-out and it's an excuse. And the bottom line is that all of that has then created the environment we're in. High levels of domestic inflation, high interest rates, slowing economy and rising unemployment. So that's why I say a lot of it is about getting back to the root cause of the problem. And frankly, the public, voted for us to improve their lives. And the way you improve their lives is you focus on the results and the outcomes, not the inputs and the resources at the front. Resources are important, but you've got to make sure they're directed towards those goals.
Youth crime, you've spoken about youth crime today at your conference here in Christchurch. I'm constantly, again, reporting on youth crime. It seems to have whipped up again. When are we going to see some tangible results and effective strategy from the national-led government to try and get this under control? When are we seeing boot camps? What are we doing?
So I know I'm sick of it. I know you're sick of it. I know most importantly the public is sick of it. And you are right. We've had a huge growth in youth offending over the last 6 years. We are working incredibly hard in the first 159 days. We've passed the gang laws. We've defunded the Section 27 cultural reports. We've committed to 500 extra police officers, which we'll fund in this budget. We're making sure we're implementing 3 strikes. And this quarter, June 30th, we'll have our rollout plan for our youth offending strategy as well, which includes the military camps.
I can't go onto the homepage of some of the major newspapers without seeing somebody stabbed, ram raided a Michael Hill jeweler's store, kids with machetes. I mean, this feels like the Wild West. This feels like downtown LA, early 90s. What's going wrong here?
And this is a consequence of 6 years of a government that was soft on crime. That's the reality of it. And in 159 days, as I said, we're working incredibly hard. We have to do 3 things with this government. We have to deliver by rebuilding the economy, we have to deliver by restoring law and order, and we have to deliver by delivering better public services, particularly on health and education. So, we get it, we understand it, we're as frustrated as everybody is, but we're also working incredibly hard to make sure we get that system set of responses in place, and the police ultimately have the tools that they need. With youth offending, our focus, as we talked about before the election and during the election campaign, was to create a new category called serious youth offender, young offender, category, which judges will have available to them, and then equally as part of that, our military academies. And I think, when you look at it, those are the kinds of things we need to be doing. At the same time, we need to get young people back into work. We can't have them sitting on welfare forever. And if you're not meeting your obligations of looking for a job, it's really important if you're on unemployment benefit that you actually are getting into work, and we're moving your life forward. Yep, there's a lot of work for us to do, and equally I'm as frustrated as everybody is about it.
I want to end on something positive, Prime Minister. The Christchurch economy, surprise, surprise, is doing better than the national economy. It bucks the trend according to the latest Business Canterbury quarterly survey. I mean, you're a former Christchurch person. What is it about this place that you think is almost separate from the rest of the country? Because it is doing well economically.
It's doing well, and I think the reality is that, certainly we can do better across the whole of the country, and Christchurch included, but I always have felt in Christchurch you've got high levels of entrepreneurship. You've got a fantastic university here. I was just away on a Southeast Asian tour, and we had we took a bunch of people from Christchurch here on advanced aviation and space. Yeah. Well, why is that? Well, because we've had very good schools. Schools teach STEM subjects. We're taking the Christchurch approach of structured literacy and mandating that. You would have seen us announce that this week. So that's the way we're going to teach our kids to read across the whole of the country. Same way, everywhere. And importantly, you get good education, STEM subjects, coming into university, doing engineering, and then joining, there's been a number of great startups here in Christchurch that have gone into advanced aviation, and now you see a launch pad emerging on Lake Ellesmere, and I'm sure that will attract a lot of international interest as well. And that's a great way in which you see a high value sector to an economy being built because of the infrastructure that's available that supports all of that. So pretty exciting times. And I have to say, look, 159 days into the job, I know it's tough. I know Kiwis are doing it tough. I'm very clear-eyed about all of that, and I know we won't shy away from tough decisions to get things sorted for people. But honestly, we have a fantastic future in this country. I mean, the more I see the opportunities sitting in Southeast Asia, where I was recently, for New Zealand businesses and services, 1 in 4 of our jobs in New Zealand are tied to trade. That means we've got to get our confidence back, get our ambition, aspiration, excellence, celebrate excellence, and get out in the world and go for it. And we've got all the people we need. We're a bang smack in the middle of the Indo-Pacific region. We've got abundant natural resources. We've got a multicultural society built on strong bicultural foundations and good social institutions. So, there's no excuses for why we shouldn't be able to do exceptionally well for ourselves out there in the big world. Just
finally on that space thing, I mean, we have got a decent space industry now here in Canterbury. If somebody said to you, do you want to hop in this lunar module and we'll give you a space orbit flight, would you do it?
I don't think so, but I'm not sure. I mean, I'd quite like to. I have to think about it, but I don't think it'd be my cup of tea. Yeah. But what I'm pleased about is that's exactly how we upgrade the economy, right? Higher value sectors, higher paying jobs, bigger economy, more wealth, better public services.
I thought you were going to say that's how we upgrade the economy, is get you in a lunar module or something. Chris Luxon, good to see you.
Good to see you, Chris.
Thanks
Always
for your
good to spend time with you.